Welcome to Two Homes. This podcast explores the relationship between our inner world and the systems we live within, from our bodies and beliefs to the businesses, destinations, and environments we shape. Because sustainability that isn't embodied doesn't last, and well-being that stays at the surface level doesn't change much at all. Together, we'll explore what it really takes to build systems that support people, places, and the planet over the long term. From leadership and organizational culture to the hidden patterns that shape how we live, work, and travel. This is an invitation to look a little deeper and to discover how meaningful change often starts closer to home than we think. Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Homes. I'm your host, Sarah Rhodes, and today's topic is what the most effective leaders do differently. This is a topic I love. It is a counterintuitive approach to leadership, and I've seen it be effective in my own business and in others as well. I wanted to talk about this topic today because it's something that I talk about a lot in my day-to-day work, in my business relationships, and also in my personal relationships, because I think that coming from a Western culture, the more is more philosophy is starting to feel a little outdated. And over the last 11, 12 years, I've started to look at things very differently, and I've started to tune in to those who are following similar ways of showing up to what I'm going to share with you in today's episode, and realizing that being busy is very different to being effective. Hustling to the point of burnout may not be the answer. And when I speak to people in tourism and hospitality today, I see what I experienced for myself when I worked in hotels nearly over 2 decades ago. I see that same urgency is there. And I wonder if I could turn back time and apply what I know now to my situation then, just how different it would be. Alas, we cannot. We can only go forward. And I think that this is a topic that needs to be talked about more often. And I think there's a real opportunity. And I also think it's really scary. I see it so often, and dare I say more commonly with women, where more and more is loaded on, and we take it. We feel like we have to prove that we can do it all, and that we hold things up for underperforming members of our teams and think that if we can't do it all, then we've failed somehow. And to me, that's really quite sad. And whilst I've talked about dysregulation in our nervous systems before, I also notice this a lot more showing up systemically in so much of how this big city I live in operates. Constantly building, knocking buildings down, building new ones, constantly running for buses, drinking lots of coffee, having lots of meetings, sending emails at 9 o'clock at night. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to really consider, are we living to work or are we working to live? So, maybe from the get-go, you're thinking, that's all very well and good, but you don't understand. I have a full diary. I've got a team depending on me. I've got targets to hit and a sustainability report due. But I want to say this is exactly why this episode might be just the thing that you need. You don't have to meditate, but it might not hurt. You don't have to have a wholesome morning routine, but it might help. Aside from those things, though, I think it's really important to have a look at how your operation is designed. Because if your system is built for speed at all costs, then your personal practices will take a lot longer to make a difference and may even feel drowned out by the system more often than not. Okay, so there's a problem with constant acceleration, and yet we've been taught that this is what business is. This is economics. This is business. We need to produce year-on-year improvements. We need to produce more. And so most hospitality leaders are looking at that. What was this like this time last year? What was it like this time last quarter? What is all of the effort actually producing? Are we being efficient with our room night allocations? Are we being smart about occupancy numbers? Are we achieving what we could really achieve in this way? When I look at the average GM or department head, I see busyness, meetings, not enough time to get things done, not enough time to plan ahead. Everything is urgent, it's immediate, it's now. And so there comes a point where this starts producing less. There comes a point where there's only 3 months to achieve a mandatory certification that's required. There's opportunities that are missed because email boxes are overflowing, and there's a constant pressure clouding everything every day, a feeling like the to-do list is never done, a feeling like you're always running to keep up. I know this, I felt this, and there's been more than one point in my life where I've fallen into this pattern and felt like I've had to work harder, but that mistakes happen exactly when that's happening, and the outcome isn't necessarily the outcome that I was going for. And in an earlier episode, I referenced that around 66% of Australian workers reported feeling burnt out in 2024. This is wild. That's 2/3 of the workforce feeling burnt out. And I really, again, point to the fact that I live in this big city of Sydney. I really see it. I see the strain, the sustained urgency. It's so prevalent. And I would say, yeah, it feels like 2/3 of the people, to be honest. And when people are constantly feeling drained, constantly feeling perhaps like there's not much hope, then energy diminishes. A bit of a sense that things aren't quite right. Perhaps more conversations complaining than there are about how well things are going. And this can be emphasized after big events or campaigns. And it's just so normal that it's barely considered an anomaly. But this cycle is bit by bit wearing things down. So I called this episode What the Most Effective Leaders Are Doing Differently. And this is what we're going to look at, the alternative to hustling, to constantly being in meetings, to constantly being drowned in emails, and start to look at what a slower, more considered, more practical way might just actually produce better outcomes and less overwhelm. Let's start with meetings. Meetings are one of the most visible places where busyness masquerades as progress. Who of you have sat in a meeting where you've gone around the table with the shopping list of items that each person has done, and they sound pretty similar to the same shopping list of items that was read out in the meeting the week before? Sound familiar? And what about meetings that actually move things forward? How do they feel? What do they look like? And how do they differ from the ones that just fill up your calendar? One of my favorite things to recommend is 5 minutes of sustainability on a weekly operations agenda versus a standalone quarterly sustainability meeting. The difference between the two is huge. 5 minutes a week compared to maybe an hour or two once a quarter. The time is probably fairly similar. I haven't calculated it, but the outcome is vastly different. When we start to bring something into focus, we start to raise it as something that needs attention. We start to flag it with our brain. Hang on, sustainability, every meeting, 5 minutes, this is important. The brain will go looking for things to bring to that meeting. And when you've involved the whole team, that's a lot of brains thinking about how to bring this into what we're doing weekly, daily, operationally. It starts to produce a shift in thinking and a shift in culture. And when a leader genuinely creates some space for this in a meeting, not rushing it to the next agenda item, not waiting until the very end, but actually prioritizing it, it slowly starts to build into something really meaningful. after meetings, I actually just want to touch on emails really quickly as another tactical thing before I go into another topic that's a little bit more behavioral. But emails as a thing, if you think about your inbox, what do you think when you think about your inbox? There's been more than one occasion where I've thought about my inbox and thought, what is it about me that makes me think I have to reply to every single email? And what is it about email that makes us feel like we have to reply to it all right now today? Or maybe you're someone who just sees the number pile up and it doesn't feel as urgent, but later you find something in there that you wish you hadn't missed. Or that suddenly there's 6 unanswered emails from the one person. Whereas had you replied to the first email, it would have already been dealt with. I'm curious about email, especially because there's definitely been phases where, email boxes as a to-do list can feel unproductive. So how do we be productive and intentional with our emails, but don't let them rule our lives? How do we stop one email from becoming 6 emails and not always be in our inbox and not be working on the weekend to catch up or get ahead of the week? I think emails are yet another symptom of how we're operating in busyness, because sending an email can also feel like, I did something. I made some progress. I sent some emails. So moving on from emails, let's get a little bit more behavioral. Something I think that is really powerful is taking a pause before making a decision. I've talked about the regulated leader making longer-term decisions and the dysregulated leader defaulting to short-term action, not necessarily the most thought-through action. So what does a pause before a big decision look like? And what does it change about the outcome? And something I've heard coming up a little bit more recently is making no your default. How many requests come through via email or in meetings or in general day-to-day business, and we feel the need to say yes to everything? Or what if no was the first thought? The pause is important. Let's not forget the pause. That's what we're here for. But pausing, sitting with no, and then thinking about what no would mean. And I'm not saying that we go all like it's a no, like everything is a no. I'm also not saying we turn it into a movie and everything is yes. What I'm saying here is, how does that no feel? If the no feels like, I can't say no because it would look bad, is very different to, I can't say no because this is important for the team. This is helping us achieve our target. This is integral to our connection or guest experience. This is where the no is powerful. This is where the pause and the no illuminates what needs to be a yes. So then we can say yes wholeheartedly to the things that are getting us to where we need to go. Over the years of having my business, I have felt like I've had to say yes to every request. This is a little bit different to running a hotel, but I'm in the business of leadership, of sustainability, of wanting to make the world a better place. So it seems like the right thing to do to say yes. The thing is, every time I've said yes to something that is not aligned, it's meant I've had to say no to things that perhaps would have helped more people, would have created more alignment with the vision and with the outcomes I'm looking for. So this is where the pause is really helpful. And I used to think that pausing and taking my time, sleeping on it, was a sign that I was indecisive, but I've realized it's actually more a sign that I want to be intentional, that I don't want to feel like everything needs to be a yes, because not everything is a yes. Just like not everything is a no. So I encourage the pause, and the pause doesn't have to be done in isolation. It can also be done as a team. And so I'd love to share an example from a hotel in Cambodia, and during the early stages of COVID and lockdowns, and when tourism was closed off, there were some clear decisions that hotel had to make. They had to reduce their expenditure immediately and drastically, and they had thought the only way would be through cutting jobs. But they took a pause, and that pause was a game changer. So they took their problem to their team, and the team came up with a counteroffer. And they said, okay, what's the budget? What do we need to work towards? Let's see, how can we keep everybody in a reduced capacity, reduced responsibilities? Let's change how we work, but not who works here. And that's what the pause achieved. So as well as retaining all of their staff, it meant that when tourism began again, when guests started coming in, they were one of the very few places that were not scrambling to get new staff to rebuild their team, because their team were already there. This was an intentional, considered pause, a collective pause even, where they were able to start dialing it up immediately on the other side. It's very likely that it feels like there's no time to pause, and that's okay. Being able to implement a pause takes a bit of practice. Our nervous systems are dialed up for urgency, and we can't just switch that off overnight. What we can do is start to dial that urgency down. It might be for a breath. It might be for a minute. That minute might be able to turn into 5 minutes. That minute might be able to turn into a cup of coffee. That cup of coffee might be able to turn into, I'll sleep on it and I'll look at it again tomorrow. It might look like time-blocked moments in the calendar that are dedicated to certain things, that you know that budget and finance is coming up repeatedly, and yet it happens all over the place, ad hoc, sporadically, urgently, now, here, there. Maybe this looks like a 5-minute standing meeting with the CFO every morning, giving it a contained space so that it belongs somewhere instead of belonging everywhere. It doesn't need to be one way or another, but I invite you to consider how the pause might support you, how changing the approach to start to unwind the constant urgency might actually get you better results on the other side. Okay, so that might be on an individual level. I also love this example that I've shared before, but more about a team approach to taking a breath. There's an NGO in Cambodia. It's a hospitality training school, and they start every day with a team meeting, some gardening, and a cup of tea before diving into work. This kind of intentional and collective pause means that people start their work day with a clear directive. They've had the meeting. They know what they need to do. They've had the connection, and they've grounded. They've connected with nature. Now they are fully resourced and ready to get going. They can go through their day, they've got clarity, and they know that it's all going to be okay. On the flip side, so often in Australia, it's waking up to the alarm, rushing around as quickly as possible, getting to the office, probably with a takeaway cup of coffee in hand, and being attacked by the day, and then running flat out, swapping between tabs and tasks and meetings and outputs and being on the go constantly until many, many hours later to leave drained, exhausted, only to have to do it all again the next day. Teams who pause, who take time together, whether that's through gardening, whether it's through movement, many places will do yoga or mindfulness, or maybe it's a shared meal and a little bit of lunchtime trivia, or just genuinely check in with each other. They tend to be more cohesive, more effective. They're still producing. They're still high performing. They're getting their work done, but there's a sense of surety, a sense of confidence, a sense that all will be okay, and therefore it is. There can also be a version of team culture where people are so busy doing that they never lift their heads to ask whether what they're doing is the right thing to do. It doesn't give the opportunity for curiosity, growth, blue sky thinking. Slowing down creates the conditions for new ideas to come forth, better ways of doing things to come forward, better questions to be asked. When leaders and teams genuinely slow down, not as a one-off, but as a practice, focus and output is dialed in. Things are done. A sense of accomplishment more often than a sense of despair. Thought through, fully complete, not half-assed done. And decision quality becomes creative, future thinking, and less reactive, less stressful. Burnout rates go down. Hospitality teams that take time to consider, connect, work together, do things intentionally, engage their team, create meaning, and end up seeing staff taking less sick days, being more engaged when they are at work, having more fun, giving a better guest experience, and staying in the job longer. What great leaders are doing well is actually a commercial strategy, not a nice to have. I was in a meeting recently where I suggested moving the meeting time because that time really wasn't working for me. And the response I had was, people have full-time jobs. And whilst I may have reconsidered my answer after the fact because I'm still learning on this journey as well, I thought, what does this person think that I have? I mean, I have also a full-time job, and I also know my limits and that I don't want to be sitting in a 2-hour meeting during my evenings because I couldn't make space for it during my work hours. And my humble response was, yeah, I guess I'm lucky that I have flexibility with my work schedule. But it's not about luck. It's not about luck. And yes, I work for myself, so there's a few less layers to get through. However, I think that we can all have this kind of approach. I think that we can all ask for what is more sustainable in our work lives. And I think we should be doing it more often. What I see over and over again is that when leaders take time to prioritize, to protect energy, to protect and cultivate meaningful cultures, things get better. And whilst perpetual growth is an illusion, we need metrics that encompass so much more. But there is better productivity, higher quality outputs, and increased revenue as a result. Better customer experience and reviews, more loyalty from guests. And yes, it seems counterintuitive. And yet I think that's just because we've become so used to things being the way that they are, that it seems strange to do it any other way. So this podcast is called Two Homes. It's our inner world and the outer system. When the inner home feels safe and calm and confident, then the outer system reflects that. And that's nice to be around. That's attractive for staff. It's attractive for guests. Something I talk about in NIA is dynamic ease, and also connects with, I guess, sustainability, really. Maybe that's why I love these two practices so much, the sustainability practice and the NIA practice, just for clarity there. But dynamic ease in NIA, it's about being active and engaged, but not depleting. It's about being flexible and striving, but not overexerting and worn out. So dynamic ease in hospitality might look like team debriefs or briefs, team briefings before events that aren't just about schedules and canapes, but talk about how things will run in a way that ensures that there's buffer room, there is contingency space, that we're not running flat out because that's when accidents happen, that we're operating with dynamic ease, efficient, calm, confident, and connected. So whilst personally this might look like a morning walk, a lunchtime meditation, or eating a meal that isn't at a desk, what this produces in my work that the frantic version of me couldn't is thoughtful, high quality, customer focused, tangible results. So if you're listening to this episode today and any part of it connects with you, perhaps ask yourself, what is the smallest possible version of this that applies to me? What's something you've been saying yes to that should have been a no all along? And if you still don't believe me that slowing down can actually get more done, give it a go. I'd love to hear how it goes for you, and I welcome the opportunity to be proved wrong. Thank you for tuning in today. This has been Two Homes and the episode on what the best leaders are doing differently. Thank you for being here, and if you've enjoyed this episode or you've got something to share, please leave me a comment or a review. The podcast is on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and I'll look forward to seeing you.